Welcome everyone, it's Shari Carroll for SimonsStamp.com, and I'm working with some distressed ink color combinations, and this one is for Kitsch Flamingo. I'm going to make a little rainbow strip, and I'm going to be cutting this out with the COSMO flower dies, and what I'm doing is blending my three colors onto the strip of paper. I'm starting with the Kitsch Flamingo, then I've moved on to mustard seed, and then finally some broken china. I'm letting these overlap a little bit, and I'm going back in to add more color. I'm using these as primary colors like red, yellow, and blue, and the in-between colors will make orange, green, and purple. So once I have my strip done, I'll be using the Cosmo flower die to cut out my petals. I've colored an additional strip so I have plenty of petals to work with, and I'm using the solid pieces of the die set. I'm going to be splattering these with some white gouache. You could use white paint or even white gesso if you want. I've put a little bit on my surface and I'm using a watercolor brush, and I'm going to water this down. Once I have enough water on here, I can tap my paintbrush over the petals to get some nice splatters. While those are drying, I'm going to be doing some stenciling with the Cosmo Flower stencil and a piece of white Neenah cardstock, and I've cut that to 4¼ by 5½. And I'm using my tonic magnetic board to hold down my stencil, and I can use a little bit of tape on one side to create a little hinge so if I want to peek at my progress, I can. I'm using my blending brush and I have it loaded with some Kitsch Flamingo. I'm adding more concentrated color to the center of the cardstock, and I'm moving my brush around in circular motion to the outside until I can see it's fading out, and then I can reload my brush and reapply. For this background, I haven't colored the entire panel. I've just left the edges sort of faded out, and I'll show you how this looks up close. So now I have a really nice fine impression of that Cosmo flower. Now that my petals are all dry, I can start gluing them on, and I have die cut a white disc, and that's also in the Cosmo Flower die set. And I'm only adding the glue just to the white disc, and then I can press the petal in place. For the flower center, I'm using a piece that I have done some ink blending with the Kitsch Flamingo, and I've die cut that. And I'll be backing this with another white disc. To adhere these together, I'm using my Simon Says Stamp Craft Tacky Glue, and I'm just adding dots of glue, and then I can place the disc right on top and pull those together until the sides match up. I've cut several of the top layering piece of the Cosmo flower, and I'm adding some glue just to the center of each of those petals, and I'm offsetting these just a little bit so it gives it some interesting dimension. Once I have all my petals done, I'm using a foam square right in the center, and then I can add the center of the flower on top. I'll be making an edge-to-edge shaker, and for this I'm using a piece of vellum. I have trimmed my panel down to 4 by 5¼ and I have trimmed my vellum to 4½ by 5¾ so I have a little bit of edge on the side that I can fold over. So without scoring or anything, I'm just using the edge of the paper to crease it over, and I'll do this on the long sides of each of these sides. So I'll turn this and crease the other side to make sure that everything sits flat. You'll want to trim off the corners, and so I'm just going at a 45-degree angle, and then I'm cutting off that extra little flap, and I'll do this on both of the sides. This will help create less bulk at each of the corners. I'm using some score tape to seal each of my sides, and I'm making sure everything's lined up before I press that down. And I'll continue and seal 3 of the sides, leaving one open so I can fill it with my sequins. To fill this up, you can just bow the paper and start filling it with the amount of sequins that you would like. And I like to just fold this over a little bit and kind of check it out, shake it around a little bit to see if that's enough. And once I'm happy with the amount of sequins, I can go ahead and seal up that final side. I am mounting my panel onto a top folding Simon Says Stamp note card, and I've left these little tabs hanging out, and it's a really easy trick that I learned from Debbie Hughes where you leave those little side pieces. Once you have that lined up, you can pull on the tabs that you've created to get a quick seal without having to dig around for the end pieces. I'm mounting up one of my flowers with some dimensional foam squares, and I'll figure out which way I want to put this once I have my direction established, I can press that down and I'm going to mount my second flower just flush onto the vellum, and I'm using Simon Says Stamp dot runner right on the back of those petals, and I can place this just underneath the other petals of the other flower. And once I'm happy with my entire arrangement, I can remove the backing of the foam squares from my lifted flower. I'm keeping my greeting really nice and clean, and I have die cut the thanks, and I have stacked that up a couple times. I'm using Simon Says Stamp glue. I'll be gluing the end of the word just flush to the petals. I've added a little bit of foam tape just under the T and the H so that that is lifted up off the vellum. I've also added a few sequins to finish this card off. I love how the petals turned out. They look a little bit like tie-dye and also rainbows. So I hope you've enjoyed my combination of Kitsch Flamingo along with mustard seed and broken china. And as always, thanks so much for watching.